Boom! Ha 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 ha! Thundercloud. Washed away the garbage, leaving rainbows after rains. Yeah, everybody knows Mum calls me James. Here I am on a Chillin Tuesday. Welcome to the Seahorse Medicine Cafe. Another night of cold outside, but warm, lovely poetry just for you to celebrate the wonderful heritage of poetry that is Australian literature. And tonight I'm focusing on some really old stuff, yes. Concept warning, because there will be mention of death, the killing of people, the killing of convicts, of Aboriginal people, the death of Aboriginal people, the death of convicts, the death of other people. It's a dead night, really. But in the spirit of truth telling, it's very important that poetry is told, because some of this old poetry holds some wonderful truths about this continent of Australia. Notice I'm not saying nation of Australia, this continent of Australia, and the atrocities that have happened during the colonisation of, well, not only Australia but also Ireland, to the Irish, to the English convicts that were sent out here, as well as the Aboriginal and First Nations people, and which continues today. Yeah, so it's a real dead night. We're going to be celebrating death, but really in a positive way, because this is about telling the truth. Right, let's get the show underway. Let's begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I broadcast, the Banbo, Kamilaroi people, to acknowledge the continuing connection to the land of the elders past and present, to acknowledge sovereignty has never been ceded, and a treaty is what is asked for and needed. On that note, we will move right along. So later on tonight, I won't be reading out of my new book, Jane Bug's Peaceful Protest in Nimbin, available on Amazon or here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame, as a Kindle or a paperback, or I won't be reading out of, to begin with, Poetry to End Prohibition, my other book, also available on Amazon and Kindle as a download and as EPUB. You can check that out in the links in the description if you'd like, underneath, which I'll put down there below. While you're doing that, don't forget to give this a thumbs up and leave a comment on what you would like to hear me reading out. What poets? Do you have a favourite poet? Well, put the name of your favourite poet in the comment section down there, and I'll get to read it, and then I'll get to read it out to you. How about that? All right, well, let's get the show on the road. We're celebrating death tonight. Now, I'm starting off with this book here called Freedom on the Wallaby. On the Wallaby was sort of like on the Wallaby track back in the day, and it was sort of like you were sort of hopping about, going, working here and there, work about, like a swaggy, etc. Freedom on the Wallaby, edited by Marjorie Pizza, the Pinch Gut Press, Wharf Lane, Sydney. Poems of the Australian People, published in, this one went to the Richmond Tweed Regional Library in 1974, but actually there must be a publishing date in here, not that I can find. No, it doesn't look like it. How about that might have been cut out. Don't matter, doesn't matter. What does matter is what I'm going to read to you. All right. It's just a little blurb here. It's not really such poetry, but it's a good introduction, right? 1788 to 1849. I think there's only one poem that I'll be doing tonight that will be from a bit after that time period. 1788 to 1849. Murderers, pickpockets, forgers and petty criminals were among the convicts sent to the colony. But in the main they were poor of England, transported for the crime of trying to feed and clothe their starving families. Among them too were men condemned for their political beliefs. Chartists, Irish rebels, and some like the toll puddle martyrs who formed the first trade unions and demanded improved conditions for working people. The colony spread rapidly along the coastal fringe, burst the barriers of the Blue Mountain and fanned out in all directions, north, west and south. Military officers, emancipated convicts and wealthy immigrants illegally seized large tracts of land for grazing sheep. Note that, illegally seized large tracts of land for grazing sheep. In 1840, the shipment of convicts to New South Wales ceased. But within the next 4 years, the squatters, hungry for free labour on their large stations, sought a renewal of transportation. This, however, the Australian people were determined to resist, and in their first popular struggle, newspapers and journals sprang up, calling for the end of convictism and the liberation of Australia from squatter rule. Men like Charles Harper, in voicing the aspirations of thousands, found that they were poets. So yeah, nice little introduction we've got there. All right, well, I am going to start off with our bit of First Nations history here before I do anything. And I've got this book here, Australian Bush Ballads, edited by Douglas Stewart and Nancy Keesing, published by Times House, the Collector's Library of Australia's Great Books. And this was first published in 1955. This edition was a 1987 reprint, so it's fairly recent, but in 1955 this was first out. Now, what have I got here for you? As I said, this is about death tonight. And so I'm going to start with POWs Revenge by F.C. Urquhart. Now, there were many clashes between the squatters, the illegal settlers, that is, the squatters, the military, and also the First Nations of the people. And this one here documents a retribution by the invaders. POWs Revenge by F.C. Urquhart. Swiftly, the messenger had sped o'er the rough mountain tracks to tell the news our friend was dead, killed by the ruthless blacks. It was the tale so often told of confidence misplaced, of savage treachery grown bold, and a good chance embraced. He met them near the close of day and gave them meat and bread, and then in peace he went his way, thinking he'd naught to dread. With stealthy step on murder bent, they stalked his camp that night, and carried out their foul intent by setting moon's pale light. Horses a-mustered, carbines bright, are gleaming in the sun. Riders are thinking of that night, and vengeance to be done. With steady patience, 7 days the avenging troop rides fast, passing by rugged mountain ways to reach the scene at last. And there beneath a low bent tree they see a ghastly sight, and scarcely could fancy it was he they knew was slain last night. Grimly the troopers stood around that newly made forest grave, and to their eyes that fresh heaped mound for vengeance seemed to crave. And one spake out in deep stern tones and raised his hand on high, for every one of those poor bones a Calcadoon shall die. Then mournfully they turn their backs upon that lonely place, and ride away upon the tracks to give the murderers chase. "Surrender!" the troopers loudly cry. In the black native tone, the desperate wretches made reply with showers of spear and stone. "Fire!" the word rang out clearly out in the fresh morning air. From rock and crag that awesome shout it echoed everywhere. See how the sable murderers fly, smitten with deadly fear. They dare not pause to fight and die, and soon the field is clear, save for just scattered here and there a dead thing on the ground, a dead thing with black matted hair, lives without life or sound. Now, traveller, if you upon this spot your step should e'er infringe, know what shall never be forgot, that here was POWs' revenge. Well, yeah. So it was a very violent time back then. This one here, the next one I'm going to do is called The Ring of Death. I've done it once before, very long ago. I've been looking for this one for a long time, re-looking for it so I could do it for you one night here on a Tuesday night. And this is from C.G.A. Coles. Now, it's about a tribe called the Kurabulkas. Now, Kurabulka Station is out on the Diamantina River, and the Georgina River, Diamantina, one of those out there in West Queensland, in the Channel Country. Where the Ring of Death by C.G.A. Coles. Where the Burke comes down to the level plains and junctions with the Wills. By the overflow at the Kings Creek branch, where the wide, warm torrent fills. Here the floods go creeping down to the tracks where the huge Georgina flows. You may still see that rough heaped ring where the old tribe fought its foes. Hard by the Bullia track, it lies on a rising dune of sand, the ring of mounds in a desert place, in a lively, level land. Here did the Kurabulka fight their last grim fight of all, in the rain and dark with unseen foes, as the waters sapped their wall. The drought had dried up the water holes, and the very dogs were thin, and out of its ancient fastness the tribe was gathered in. The game was gone, and the fish were gone, and the mickeries were dry. Even the carnies had disappeared, and the food had all gone by. Karu Karu, the grey old man, had gone at the dusk alone, even thrice to the water hole, and taken the sacred stone, the magic stone that commands the rain, wonderful, secret, white. He had ground its fine dust into his palm. The magic stone that commands the rain, the wonderful, secret, white. The only chosen one may use, and that in the gloom of night. For this is the priceless Napa stone that came to the tribe of old, that never a jinn may see and live, and never a child behold. He'd plunged it into the shallow pond to work the magic of rain. He'd ground its fine dust into its palm and blown it about in vain. The old men, sitting about the fire, spoke now of something of fear. A black man's ghost had whistled by night, and the whistle was low and near. They felt that a curse was on the land, and few were the words they said. But they knew that some ill doer afar had pointed the bone of dead dread. So northward over the stricken land was the walkabout begun, bearing east by the river beds long parched by fervent sun. Still and hot was the wide expanse, with ne'er a tree or blade, eternal flames that touched the skies and offered no pleasant shade. All day long the burning earth lean with drought and bare, night and hunger and glowing stars, dawn and a new day's glare. Jinns with their burdens toiling on, men with their spears and shields, and the mocking mirage across the downs with phantom Elysian fields. From out of the hot north-west haze came trailers of misty shrouds. High overhead in a breathless sky rolled the deep banks of clouds. Then rain, continuous rain came down from the floodgates of the sky. Unwanted waters were on the earth, and the long, dry creeks ran high. By ancient law of an ancient land, the desperate race for the soul high dune of the overflow and the old-time camping place. For the Kurrabulka knew of how the creeping waters spread in a great, relentless, moving sea from the winding riverbed. As the waters rose and the night came on, to the camping place they came, the setting sun through a mist of rain went down like a languid flame. And still the waters rose through the lapanya trees. Up and over the cooler bars came surging and tepid seas. The men who had warred with drought so long prepared the flood to fight. They heaped a rampart out of sand by aid of the waning light. Yet ever the hungry seas encroached and fell with ever the hungry seas encroached, and ever the sand mounds grew on a tiny island amid the tide that out of the darkness grew. Then a gin screamed out in a sudden fear and rolled on the ground and died, and the rain swept down and the torrents seethed, and aloud the children cried. A man at the earthwards reeled and fell with a snake clenched in his fist, and another lurched on the wall and groaned as small fangs seared his wrist. Green were the snakes with beady eyes. They came on the warm flood's breast, searching them out, a harbour safe and seeking a place of rest. White snakes, adders, lean black snakes, and they of the carpet skin. Mulgus snakes with the scarlet scales, and sand snakes, brown and thin. Driven out of their ancient haunts, where long they'd grown and bred, in Gidea scrub and the river grass by the droughty river bred, borne away by the rising floods that o'er the whole world ran, they came, the snakes, to the harbourage to fight for a place with man. The gins had built up a fitful flare to drive back the shrouding night. They piled the last of the gundi sticks to help the feeble light. And still as the walls were heaped apace, the merciless waters rose, and over the rampart gilded in the legions of venomed foes. Red and dull in the turmoil's midst flickered and failed the fire, as children flung to the earth and shrieking died in the mire. And splashing desperate at their work with fear in their sobbing breath, men went beating at unseen foes that writhed as they dealt out death. And still, as the ghastly night wore on, the countless reptiles came, squirming among the heaps of dead that ringed round the dying flame. The camp grew still in its last long sleep, save for a hardy few, and at length when the grey wet dawn came up, the light was beheld by two that had taken flight of fear and swum to a ragged tree that reared its head from the seething waste and stemmed the rolling sea. Huddled up on the quaking limbs, with fear in their eyes they lay. And ever as snakes came down that flood, they struck and beat them away. Slowly the mighty floods went down, and the roaring spates decreased. Slowly the waste of waters sank, and the torrents ebbed and ceased. A man and boy, lean, weak and worn, came down to the earth to stand. The last of the Kurabulkas, they, to walk in a lonely land. They stood and stared at the ring of death, where all of their tribe laid still, circled round with the mounds of sand on the crest of that little hill. They turned and went from the smitten place, where all of the world was stark, the tribe that had warred with unseen foes in hunger and rain and dark, where the birk comes down to the level plains with floods from the distant hills, by the overflow of the King's Creek branch and joins with the roaring Wills. You may see the mounds by the Bullia track that served for the rampant wall, when the ancient Kurabulkas fought their last great fight of all. There's not much I can comment on that. Very sad. Okay, well, what's going on? Well, I'm just at the moment organising the November Poetry Festival here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. That's on the 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th of November. The 9th and 10th are our workshop days, and that'll also include the Australian Poetry Film Festival. So I'm just organising that too at the moment on Film Freeway. So you'll be able to, there'll be 3 categories: Australian Bush Poetry Film, best Australian Poetry Film, and Best Australian Student Poetry Film, yeah. And that'll be submittable on Film Freeway, and they've got to be up to 8 minutes. And the winners will be announced in November at the Australian Spring Poetry Festival here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame in Guyra. Yes, and at the same time on the 11th of November, the New South Wales Bush Poetry Championship, proudly supported by the Australian Bush Poetry Association and put on and hosted by the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. Yeah, that's me and here. Yes, that will be coming up. So stay tuned. Check out our Facebook page and our website for more information as it gets put up there and content gets uploaded. Yes. Okay, moving right along in such a good times and bad times. Right, I've got here the Heritage of Australian Poetry, selected by Jeffrey Dutton. All right, so we're doing a bit of a colonial, old-fashioned death kind of night tonight. What have I chosen out of this book here? The Heritage of Australian Poetry, selected by Jeff Dutton. Let me tell you about it. It is published by Curry O'Neill in the year 1984, first published in 1976. I've got a few convicty ones here for you to do from this one tonight. So that's what I'll be doing. So we're going to start off with the one I've selected first, called A Convict's Lament on the Death of Captain Logan. All right, now Captain Logan was one of the governors of the colony of, Brisbane at the one time, of southeast Queensland. I think it was called Queensland. I'm not sure if it was a separate colony at the time when he was there. Anyway, he was a real tyrant. So apparently when Captain Logan was killed, like the colony partied for 3 days because he was such a horrible man. Or they didn't go out looking for him when he disappeared for 3 days or something because they just didn't like him. All right. A Convict's Lament on the Death of Captain Logan, and this is by an anonymous writer. An Irish one, of course. I am a native of Erin Island, but banished now from my native shore. They tore me from my aged parents, and from the maiden I adore. In transient storms I set sailing, like mariner bold my course did steer. Sydney Harbour was my destination, that cursed place at length drew near. I then joined banquet in congratulation on my safe arrival from the briny sea. But alas, alas, I was mistaken. 12 years transportation to Moreton Bay. Early one morning I carelessly wandered. By the Brisbane waters I chanced to stray. I heard a prisoner sadly bewailing whilst on the sunny river banks he lay. He said, I've been a prisoner at Port Macquarie, at Norfolk Island, at Emu Plains, at Castle Hill and Toongabbie. At all those places I've worked in chains, but in all of the places of condemnation in each penal station of New South Wales, to Moreton Bay I've found no equal, for excessive tyranny of each day prevails. Early in the morning, when the day is dawning to trace from heaven the morning dew, we are started at a moment's warning, our daily labour to review. Our overseers and superintendents, these tyrants' orders we must obey, or else at the triangles our flesh is mangled. Such are our wages at Moreton Bay. For 3 long years I've been beastly treated. Heavy irons each day I wore. My back from flogging has been lacerated, and oft times painted with crimson gore. Like the Egyptians and ancient Hebrews, we were oppressed under Logan's yoke, till kind Providence came to our assistance and gave this tyrant his mortal stroke. Yes, he was hurried from that place of bondage where he thought he would gain renown, but a native black who lay in ambush gave this monster his fatal wound. My fellow prisoners, be exhilarated that all such monsters such a death may find. For it's when from bondage we are extricated, our former sufferings will fade from mind. All right, the next one here I've got for you. Well, it's actually a bit of a song because it's got a chorus in it, but I'm not going to repeat the chorus over and over. I'll just sing it once. In Dublin town I was brought up, in that city of great fame. My decent friends and parents, they will tell you the same. It was for the sake of £500 I was sent across the main for 7 long years in New South Wales to wear the convicts' chain. Chorus. Then come, my hearties, we'll roam the mountains high, together we'll plunder, together we'll die, we'll wander over mountains, we'll gallop over plains, for we scorn to live in slavery, bound down with iron chains. I'd scarce been there 12 months or more upon the Australian shore, when I took to the highway as I'd oft times done before. There was me, Jackie Underwood, Webber and Walmsley too. These were the true associates of bold Jack Donahue. Now, Donahue was taken for a notorious crime and sentenced to be hanged upon the gallows tree so high. But when they came to Sydney jail, he left them in a stew, and when they came to call the roll, they missed bold Donahue. As Donahue made his escape to the bush, he went straight away. The people, they were all afraid to travel night and day. For every week in the newspapers, there was published something new concerning this dauntless hero, the bold Jack Donahue. As Donahue was cruising one summer's afternoon, little was his notion his death was near so soon, when a sergeant of horse police discharged his carabine and called aloud on Donahue to fight or to resign. Resign to you cowardly dogs, a thing I'll never do, for I'll fight this night with all my might, cried bold Jack Donahue. I'd rather roam these hills and dales like a wolf or kangaroo than work 1 hour for government, cried bold Jack Donahue. Than work 1 hour for government. He fought 6 rounds with the horse police until the fatal ball, which pierced his heart with cruel smart, caused Donahoe to fall. And as he closed his mournful eye, he bade this world adieu, saying, "Convicts all, pray for the soul of bold Jack Donahue." Okay, so bold Jack Donahue, and that's also by Anonymous. And the next one is also by an anonymous writer, Jim Jones at Botany Bay. Oh, listen for a moment, lads, and hear me tell my tale. How o'er the sea from England shore I was compelled to sail. The jury says, "He's guilty, sir," and says the judge, says he, "For life, Jim Jones, I'm sending you across the stormy sea. And take my tip, before you ship to join the Iron Gang, don't be too gay at Botany Bay, or else you'll surely hang. Or else you'll have no chance for mischief then, remember what I say. They'll flog the poaching out of you out there at Botany Bay." The winds blew high upon the sea, the pirates came along, but the soldiers on our convict ship were full 500 strong. They opened fire and somehow drove the pirate ship away. I'd rather have joined the pirate ship than have come to Botany Bay. For night and day the irons clang like the poor galley slaves. We toil and toil, when we die we must fill dishonoured graves. But by and by I'll break my chains and into the bush I'll go and join the brave bush rangers, Jack Donahoe and co. And some dark night when everything is silent in the town, I'll kill the tyrants and one and all and shoot the floggers down. I'll give the law a little shock. Remember what I say, they'll regret they sent Jim Jones in chains to Botany Bay. Okay. Very angry man, of course, wouldn't you be if you were like locked up in chains and made to work? Probably. All right, well, I just got this one here and then to go. And after that, I might even read you something out of my book, Poetry to End Prohibition, available on Amazon, also here from the Australian Poetry Hall, as an ebook and as a paperback. Yes! It's also got poems about death, that's why I'm reading it. Okay, alrighty-o. Now, as well as the convicts in chains, there were not just men sent out. No. This is the exile of, where is it? The Female Transport, sorry. Again by Anonymous. Yeah, okay. You got to imagine that I've got a girl's voice for this. Come all young girls, both far and near, and listen unto me, while unto you I do unfold what proved my destiny. My mother died when I was young, it caused me to deplore, and I did get my way too soon upon my native shore. Sarah Collins is my name, most dreadful is my fate. My father reared me tenderly, the truth I do relate, till enticed by bad company along with many more, I led to my discovery upon my native shore. My trial approached fast, before the judge I stood, and when the judge's sentence passed, it fairly chilled my blood. crying, "You must be transported for 14 years or more, and go from hence across the seas unto Van Diemen's shore." It hurt my heart when on a coach I my native town passed by. To see so many I did know, it made me heave a sigh. Then to a ship was sent with speed along with many more, whose aching hearts did grieve to go unto Van Diemen's shore. The sea was rough, ran mountains high, and with us poor girls 'twas hard. No one but God to us came nigh, no one did us regard. At length, alas, we reached the land, it grieved us 10 times more. That wretched place, Van Diemen's Land, far from our native shore. They chained us 2 by 2 and whipped and lashed along. They cut off our provisions if we did the least things wrong. They'd march us in the burning sun until our feet are sore. So hard's our lot now we are got to Van Diemen's shore. Every night when I lay down I wet my straw with tears, while wind upon that horrid shore did whistle in our ears. Those dreadful beasts that lay around our cots do roar. Most dismal is our doom upon Van Diemen's shore. Come all young men and maidens, do bad company forsake. If tongue can tell our overthrow, it will make your heart to ache. Young girls, I pray, be ruled by me, your wicked days give over. For fear, like us, you spend your days along upon Van Diemen's shore. Yep, warning, don't be naughty or you'll end up in Australia as a convict. Yeah, okay, the next one. The Irish transport. Yes, so one of the things about Ireland, it was, 1804, there was the Castle Hill Rebellion. It was up until, right in the beginning, the only convicts that were sent over here were like naughty English people. However, the Irish rebellion at the time, because the English were also invading Ireland and trying to take it over, meant that they ended up sending out a whole lot of political prisoners. So then was it 1804 was the Castle Hill Rebellion, I think, from memory, where like there was a 1,000 Irish prisoners had a bit of a revolt. We were going to sail some ships back to England and stuff, and and back to Ireland and continue fighting with the with the rebels, with the Republicans or whoever in Ireland. All right, but 39 of them got shot. So look up the Castle Hill Rebellion if you want to know a bit about that. All right, this one's called The Irish Transport by Anon. In the county of Limerick, near the town of Ramshorn, my own native country wherein I was born, but to some foreign country I was sent for a slave, since in my own country I could not behave. It's not these long travels that's trouble to my mind, nor yet these foreign islands where I am close confined. But if we were on shipboard and my Polly with me, bound down in strong irons, I should think myself free. Oft times I have wondered how young women love young men, and oft times I have wondered how young men love them. Since a woman has been my ruin and my sad downfall, which has caused me to lie between lime and stone walls. God bless my old father, that lies in the cold clay, likewise my dear old mother that is living until this day. But the time is approaching when I shall be set free. Then I'll go straight home to Ireland for my Polly for to see. My Polly lives in Limerick town, a girl that I love dear, and when I get my liberty, with her I'll make my fare. And when I gain my liberty, with my Polly I'll remain, I will bid adieu to Van Diemen's land, likewise the raging main. All right, the next one I've got for you here. Oh no, not that one. Dialogue. Yes, Frank the Poet. All right, so yeah, Frank the Poet. Also called Frank McNamara, from a handwritten manuscript in the Mitchell Library, marked Donnell in 1932. Frank the Poet was Frank McNamara, a convict transported in the early 1920s, probably for forgery. He was well liked by both the bond and the free. His extempore verse was immensely popular, although unfortunately most of it's been lost. This one's Frank the Poet, labouring with the hoe. I was convicted by the laws of England's hostile crown, conveyed across those swelling seas in slavery's fettered bound, forever banished from that shore where love and friendship grow, that loss of freedom to deplore, and work the labouring hoe. Despised, rejected, and oppressed, in tattered rags I'm clad. What anguish fills my aching heart, breast, and almost drives me mad, when I hear the settler's threatening voice say, "Arise, to labour go, take scourging convicts for your choice, and work the labouring hoe." Growing weary from compulsive toil beneath the noontide sun, while drops of sweat bedew the soil, my task remains undone. I'm flogged for wilful negligence, or the tyrants call it so. What a doleful recompense for labouring with the hoe. Behold yon lofty woodbine hills, where the rose in the morning shines, those crystal brooks that do distill and mingle through those vines. There seems to me no pleasures gained, but they augment my woe, whilst here an outcast doomed to live and work the labouring hoe. You generous sons of errands, whose heart for glory burns, pity a wretched exile who his long lost country mourns. Restore the heaven to liberty while I lie here below. Untie the clue of bondage and release me from the hoe. Frank the Poet. All right, well, I got one more for you, and it's a dead one. It's about death. This is from my book here, Poetry to End Prohibition. Prohibition, what's that? It's the government telling you can't do stuff and punishing you for it, because they want to control your mind and what you do as adults. Okay. This was written after a visit to the Nimbin Cemetery, the Voices of the Dead. I went to visit the dead today, the cemetery, and listen to what they had to say. We're the dead and victims of laws and injustice, the ones that died from your wars. People keep dying, please change this condition. of your injustice system called drug prohibition. There were mothers and fathers and young people we grieve. He died from flakka at 23 one New Year's Eve. Watching and screaming, he was overheating, boom, boom, boom of the doof, and then his heart just stopped beating. A whole family, the baby, died in a smash of an alcoholic driver who had a car crash. The beaten and murdered children and wives, when pissed man arrives home who feared from their lives. Let's not forget those who died from cancer who couldn't access cannabis as a life enhancer. Prohibition of drugs as social abuse, locking up people for recreational use. Did you hear about how young Jake died? OD'd from the drugs his mum supplied. Prohibition of drugs is an outdated law that criminalises the socially vulnerable, sick, black and poor. Police become dealers and deal drugs to justify their jobs and do deals with thugs selling black market heroin, cocaine and ice to keep prisons full and meet KPIs. Racially profiling the coloured and poor died in a lock-up crushed behind a cell door. As I sit here, I'm looking down at the ground where I performed CPR on a young man who drowned, choked in his vomit. We tried, but he died. I met his mum, dad and siblings and we all cried. True story. Today I went to one of the dead at Nimbin Cemetery and this is what I said. Dead spirits, I'd love if you would help me harm minimise in prohibition and make cannabis free. If I was a teacher, I'd give you a fail for your punitive justice system and the way that you jail the sick, poor, black and recreational users when it's clear to all that the system abuses. Drug prohibition doesn't stop demand for drugs, it just puts it in the hands of criminals and thugs. The cost of prohibition is millions each year to imprison the harmless and put people in fear. Harm minimisation is good for your health. Sharing and caring and rehabilitate yourself. I went to the cemetery and listened to the dead. In prohibition, their spirits all said. Yeah. When the government gets involved, causes lots of problems. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it from the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame Chillin Tuesday on Thundercloud. Join us tomorrow night for Wednesday Words here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. And if you're about in Gyra, why don't you come on down and enjoy the night? I sit in here in the nice warm Seahorse Medicine Cafe with a heater above the heater beside you. And listen, enjoy a hot bowl of minestrone soup or pumpkin soup or whatever my special soup of the day is. And come and listen to the poets or even bring a poetry book or your favourite poem and you can read it out. Yes, there'll be no judgment. We just love poets here. All right. I'm Thundercloud. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Comment who is your favourite poet and who do you want to hear next. I'm washing away the garbage, leaving rainbows after rains. yes, you know what my mum calls me. James! Yeah, Mum, I'm coming. See you later.